Hello, and a very warm welcome to Between Lines. I'm Reed, your guide to the world of the written word and storytelling. I hope I can share some tips and inspiration to help make your story even more captivating and engaging. Let's get started. The Black Prism is a 2010 fantasy novel by Brent Weeks. It is the first installment in the Lightbringer series. The book features several plot lines that converge at the end. After the war, the leader of the Empire Prism, Gavin Guile, receives a message claiming he has a 15-year-old son in Tyrea. To investigate, he secretly brings Karis White Oak, his former fiancée and a Blackguard warrior, to Tyrea by magical flight. They find the town of Recton destroyed by the antagonist King Garadul, who has rebelled against the Chromeria and plans to seize Garriston. The rescued boy, Kip, is revealed as Gavin's son. Kip carries a mysterious dagger from his dying mother, but Garadul takes it. Karis later learns of Gavin's apparent infidelity and, furious, separates from him. Meanwhile, Gavin returns to the Chromeria with Kip, where the truth is revealed. The prism is actually Dazen Guile, who assumed his brother Gavin's identity after secretly imprisoning him. Dazen learns that the dagger may contain mythical white Luxon and is ordered by his father to recover it. He returns to Tyrea with Kip, Iron Fist, and Liv to defend Garriston. Kip and Liv attempt to rescue Karis, who discovers that Lord Omnichrome is her supposedly dead brother Koyos. Liv defects to Omnichrome, Garadul dies, and Kip kills him in rage. During the escape, Kip saves Dazen from an assassin and recovers the dagger. He later reads his mother's note, accusing Gavin Guile of rape. The real Gavin escapes his blue prison, only to enter a green one, while Dazen realizes he can no longer draft blue. There are multiple narrative layers that follow different characters, providing a variety of perspectives and settings. The protagonist is Kip, who is introduced as a poor beggar boy. A typical save the cat strategy. The reader is supposed to like Kip because he is poor, poorly dressed, and disadvantaged. Later, it is revealed that Kip is the son of the Prism. This gives him the right to participate in the major events. The ignorant boy is, in reality, important, special, chosen, or of noble birth. A functional but heavily overused pattern. Nevertheless, Kip works well in several scenes. His fear, insecurity, loose tongue, and self-doubt are repeatedly portrayed in a believable way. Particularly strong are the moments when Kip wants to do something, but almost breaks under the weight of his doubts. This creates a convincing tension between courage in action and self-loathing. His humble origins are used as a device to introduce the reader to new locations and structures. Unfortunately, Weeks often fails to pay attention to this. If Kip knows about people's Luxon properties or political structures, it must first be shown or at least explained where he acquired that knowledge. The dynamics surrounding Gavin and Dazen, the imprisoned brother, the question of succession, the false prism, and the shift in identity, is a very interesting and well-developed construction. It is portrayed especially well when the internal designation fluctuates between Gavin and Dazen as the character speaks with his brother. This elegantly illustrates the psychological conflict. Identity, guilt, power, self-deception, and political legitimacy form a strong dramatic core here. The real Gavin in prison is also interesting, particularly because of the dead man's as an externalized, self-destructive voice. A man with iron self-control can only allow himself to acknowledge his doubts by projecting them outward. This very strong dynamic, however, rests on a shaky foundation. Why was the false prism not exposed earlier? His mother protects him, certainly, but given the highly active political landscape, it is difficult to believe that no one noticed that the wrong brother was acting as Prism, or chose to use that knowledge as political leverage. Karis is a character with a great deal of potential. Her dynamic with the false Prism is particularly interesting. Friendly, tense, wounded, and bittersweet. Weeks is certainly capable of writing emotionally nuanced relationships. The problem is that he does so far too rarely. A successful example of Weeks's skill is a chapter in which Karis appears to be doing nothing more than building a fire, while her thoughts simultaneously convey character traits, preferences, habits, and lore. It is an exceptionally clean setup for Karis's character because she subsequently begins to follow her own path more strongly. The portrayal becomes problematic when it comes to sexual details. If sexuality is meant to be a theme of the book, it must be meaningfully integrated into the plot and character development. If not, it should not appear as a shallow effect. This issue becomes especially pronounced in the portrayal of the teenagers Kip and Liv. They are too often defined through sexual stimuli, attractiveness, or spontaneous desire. In these situations, this reduces their characterization to that of hormone-driven fools. Another central criticism is the similarity between the characters. Kip, Liv, Karis, Gavin, Dazen, and even the White frequently come across as sarcastic, outspoken, or internally self-destructive. As a result, they do not differ strongly enough from one another. At times, the characters feel like the same person at different stages of development. Kip and Liv are the horny beginners. Karis is the more mature version. Gavin and Dazen are resigned veterans, and the White is the gray eminence. This may be an exaggeration, but it describes a genuine craft problem. Characters need distinct internal voices, distinct ways of thinking, distinct reaction patterns, and distinct wounds. Weeks succeeds in making his fantasy world feel alive very quickly. In the very first chapter, many central elements are introduced: war, politics, creatures, magic, power structures, and the concrete threat posed by the impending destruction of Recton. The setting immediately draws the reader in because it does not feel empty. Instead, it instantly conveys the impression that this world possesses history, conflicts, and its own rules. The magic system, however, is the foundation that makes this story truly special. It is unique while still being intuitively understandable. The idea that magic functions through colors is connected to emotions and personality traits and can ultimately drive its users insane is a powerful distinguishing feature. Details such as eyes that are differently colored depending on a person's area of specialization and materials created from different light spectra also spark curiosity. Weeks has clearly put considerable thought into his magic system. Clothing, services, architecture, and social functions are all tied to its various forms. The map in the book's end papers, the regional characteristics of the different satrapies, and the terminology all help with orientation. Weeks excels at creating dynamic, sensory, and highly visual scenes that engage all the senses, maintain momentum, and work in a cinematic way. The magic is visually distinct, easy to explain in a game-like manner, and often vividly descriptive. The action sequences in particular make excellent use of the system. Especially successful are the scenes in which magical logic and physical danger come together. The finale, featuring the Battle of Garriston, is dynamic, large-scale, and at times gripping. The battle is well portrayed, the chaos feels convincing, individual spotlights provide clarity, and Kip is forced to make real decisions. The use of the false prism on behalf of the city is also good writing. His self-sacrificing commitment during the battle makes him an interesting character because, despite the deception and political maneuvering, he cannot simply be dismissed as a false ruler. Equally successful is the ending with its powerful cliffhanger. The false prism is no longer able to draft the color blue. His brother escapes from his prison only to end up in yet another chamber. Both developments strongly motivate the reader to pick up the next book immediately. This demonstrates that when Weeks plays his strongest hooks, he is capable of creating tremendous suspense. Of course, Weeks' writing style also has room for improvement. Fantasy novels often have to convey a great deal of information within a limited number of pages. Magic theory, politics, history, cultures, religion, warfare, architecture, and social hierarchies. Readers need and want to understand these details, otherwise they would not be reading a fantasy novel in the first place. However, this often leads Weeks to have characters think about or explain things that they would not naturally be thinking about in that particular situation. Infodumps work better when a character is genuinely amazed or learning something new. Classroom scenes often function more effectively because the protagonist and the reader gain understanding together. The challenge arises when powerful characters reflect on information they have long known simply so that the reader can be informed. Explanations are both necessary and unavoidable, but they must feel organic. This is something Weeks frequently fails to achieve. As unique as the idea of the light-based magic system is, it is striking that the world in the first novel still feels rather pale and underdeveloped. It lacks consistency. Some names feel arbitrary or do not fit the setting. Honorific titles such as Iron Fist work better as local color than some of the personal and place names. The seven satrapies in the cover art evoke a world reminiscent of 1001 Nights. However, the names of people and places seem highly inconsistent. Gavin Guile sounds French, while his brother Dazen feels more like generic fantasy or even German. Karis, on the other hand, sounds pseudo-Arabic. The capital city, Garistan of Tyrea, sounds more like a place that belongs in a Western novel. And the settlement of Recton makes it very, very clear that Kip comes from the middle of nowhere. There are some indications of regional distinctions, such as the honorific name Iron Fist, but these remain the absolute exception. The hierarchy also does not feel sufficiently like a feudal system. The characters often interact on surprisingly equal terms, even though the society itself should arguably be far more hierarchical. Although the combat scenes are very well executed, the descriptions are sometimes overly detailed, even when the shock or emotional reaction of the characters would be more important in that moment. Action should not merely be spectacular, it should also change the character internally. The political intrigue has tremendous potential. Truths are used as leverage, power dynamics shift, characters manipulate one another, and some of the payoffs work extremely well. Nevertheless, I am left with the impression that Weeks does not fully capitalize on this potential. Especially at the highest political level, certain hooks are not developed as strongly as they could be. The novel hints at intrigue, but often remains more focused on action, mysteries, and personal drama. One major criticism concerns the emotional impact. On several occasions, characters die or suffer, yet the emotional resonance is missing. The death of Kip's close friend is certainly surprising, but it does not have a lasting effect because the reader knew her too little, and because the wider circle of friends had not previously been established strongly enough as a network of meaningful relationships. I am also critical of the portrayal of Kip's mother. As a neglectful and abusive parent, she is an interesting character, but her relationship with Kip should serve more strongly as an emotional catalyst. A compelling internal conflict might be, why does Kip still miss his mother? Why does he want to make her proud, even though she treated him cruelly? It is precisely these kinds of contradictions that would create greater depth. Emotional impact is not created simply because something terrible happens. It is created because a relationship has been established beforehand and because the consequences remain visible afterward. The novel has strong qualities: an original magic system, vivid though still expandable world building, good action, intriguing power struggles, and several highly successful emotional dynamics. In particular, the identity storylines surrounding Gavin and Dazen, the visual power of the magic, and the political entanglements of the characters carry the book. Its weaknesses lie primarily in the craftsmanship. Too many info dumps, character voices that sound too similar, excessive cliched sexualization that at times caters to anime tropes, reactions that do not always feel organic, and emotional moments that would benefit from stronger setup and follow-through. In addition, some plot developments feel contrived because characters know, overlook, or do certain things simply to keep the story moving forward. A fantasy novel can and should be complex, but complexity must be experienced through the plot, perspective, and emotional consequences. Good ideas, such as the original magic system, are not enough on their own. Characters need distinct voices, decisions must feel organic, and every major revelation should provide not only a plot function, but also emotional resonance. This is precisely where the most important insight lies. The book demonstrates how much a strong setting and a well-designed magic system can carry a story, but also that true narrative depth only emerges when world-building, plot, and character psychology are consistently and seamlessly interwoven.